Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Zero Hour. I am Richard RJ Eskow, and let's talk about sex and gender in rock and roll. Our next guest is Sady Doyle. She is a staff writer within These Times. She is also a freelance writer concentrating on music, gender, culture, internet, the left, and all those related issues. And she was the founder of the very aptly well-named blog Tiger Beatdown before that. And we are here to talk about gender and rock and roll. Sady, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Oh, well, great. Now, we loved your piece here at the Zero Hour, why 2015's pop music scene looks a lot like 1995's with the return of some of the great female acts of the 90s. Tell us a little bit about what's going on.
Well, I think what you're seeing now, and this is especially following in the wake of Beyonce and her really public, really interesting decision to declare herself as a feminist and sample a whole feminist lecture in the middle of the song. Flawless. But what's happening now is that it is increasingly sort of de rigueur for younger women and for really powerful pop figures to declare themselves feminists. And you're seeing that, you know, Lorde does it all the time, Taylor Swift, Charlie XCX. We're going through that moment, but what's also happening is that, you know, it's been a few decades that some of the great acts that came up in the 90s have been out, and they are now releasing these really mature works that are just fascinating and fabulous. And because everybody's talking about feminism in music, we're really in a position to start reevaluating those acts and taking them seriously again.
Well, and that to me is very exciting, and I'm delighted to see some of the great acts of the 90s come back because they did such great work, and it's great to see them back again, Sleater-Kinney and some of the others. And I did think it was exciting when Beyonce put the feminist word up and the inserted the audio of Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie and all of that. I have to say, to me, it seems like there is a broad distinction, a deep distinction between the, for lack of a better term, feminist rock of the 90s and some of the sort of feministic leanings of someone like Beyonce or some of the other. I'm wondering whether, to me, you know, there was something so real and authentic. Maybe I'm just too old, but there was something real and authentic, and gutsy about, you know, PJ Harvey and some of the other acts out there. And now I'm just wondering whether it isn't. I know there's something they call lipstick feminism, but is it kind of lip service lipstick feminism sometimes, where they appropriate the word and the term and some of the cultural trappings, but they're not embodying the same energy of feminist equality?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think Beyonce is pretty gutsy. I think Nicki Minaj, who's been, you know, talking about her abortion experience and what it's like to be a woman who is probably going to be more powerful than any man she's in a relationship with. Nicki Minaj is pretty gutsy. It has shifted genres, and I, you know, struggle with this too, because, I mean, for me, my feminism was something I really discovered through music, and my feminism was very much associated with, like, really good guitar tone and this sort of 90s alt culture. I think just because it's shifted genres, it doesn't have to be hollow. You know, somebody who is, I'm a very particular age in that I am the same age as both Beyonce and Britney Spears. So my whole adolescence was really spent learning about rock and learning how to value rock and learning how to value funk. And that's where I can connect to someone like Sleater-Kinney, someone who's even 1 or 2 years younger than I am. And you see this in Charlie XCX, who's a really fascinating figure. She went out there and recorded a punk album and then scrapped it and re-released it as a feminist pop album with some new songs on there. And that's because she's younger than I am, and her formative experience of music has never not had Max Martin in it. It's never not had pop in it. So I think, I always associated a lot of pop with sort of denigrating women or hypersexualizing them or not giving them agency to create and shape their own personas. But for someone who's younger than I am, they're kind of reclaiming pop. They're kind of making that into their playground. And I should say that even in the 90s, it wasn't all rock that had really powerful political messages. Like certainly Lauryn Hill sold God knows how many albums. She was huge, and she was also like fiercely and openly very political and very progressive.
Yes. Now, and we're talking with Sady Doyle about music and feminism. Now, I have to say, I wasn't specifically speaking about genre, although I can see how you would get that impression. I was more speaking about, and it's a complex issue. First of all, I happen to just think Nicki Minaj is a genius, and that she. Yeah. I love the Kanye track where she's on there with Kanye and Jay-Z and one or two other people. She blows them away. It was on the album before that. She's just so powerful. And so she embodies in a literal and metaphorical sense so much power that I think she's a fascinating figure. But I what I was really getting at with, let's say, someone like Beyonce is, who I really respect, but on the one hand, she embraces the title and the nomenclature of feminism and the rhetoric. And I think it was fantastic what she did. I think a lot of people learned a lot through Beyonce, so I really respect it. But then in the next moment, she's, objectifying herself in a kind of what seems to me like lap dance imagery. And I'm just wondering to what extent it's 2 steps forward, 2.5 steps back, and then you have Lana Del Rey, who's a kind of caricature, and you have, it just seems to me, and you're right, it was a mixed bag in the 90s, but it seems to me across genres, you're getting all sorts of mixed messages.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Beyonce, she's managed to, in my opinion, own her sexuality in a way that I never feel like she's out of control of it. I never feel that Beyonce is being exploited. What I do think is that you can, I think Beyonce can do whatever she wants because obviously she's, getting her message out there, and she's really powerful for a lot of women, and particularly, women of color for whom it's really great to see this, successful Black woman who doesn't deny her sexuality and who doesn't deny her intellect and who's able to build a strong life for herself that, can incorporate both the sexy dancing and the feminist lecture. For me, I think that you're right that there can be sort of hollowness or lip service paid to it. One figure that I would really associate that with, and I complained about her a lot in the article, was Meghan Trainor, who is, she's singing sort of, kind of, about these feminist topics. She's, talking about how, boys love her because she's not a size 0 and Photoshop is terrible, and that's all stuff that feminists have talked about, but it's served in such a hollow way that's really not connected to any deeper analysis. People can take issue with Beyonce's self-presentation and the way she's really sexual, but it's also undeniable that, she wrote an op-ed about gender equality, and she actually did go out there and sort through feminist videos on YouTube until she found the Adichie sample. She found something that most concisely represented her beliefs. She's done the work. With someone like Meghan Trainor, I don't fully believe that she's done the work. I think that she is a young woman in an age where it's not only no longer taboo, but sort of popular to say things that sound kind of sort of feminist, and she's sort of echoing them in a hollow way that when you really look at it just doesn't have much work behind it, doesn't have much understanding of feminism behind it. I think someone else you could look at for that is Miley Cyrus.
Oh, my God.
As much as her...
Look, she seems to me so manufactured, so cartoonish, so exploited and exploitative at the same time, that not to mention the exploitation of Black women's bodies, which I totally agree with that interpretation of her work. My favorite response to her her performance with Robin Thicke was somebody who tweeted out, "Why is Hannah Montana twerking at Beetlejuice?"
Yeah. And I think Miley would tell you that, like, her twerking is her feminist liberation. I mean, I think one thing I do believe Miley Cyrus is 100% serious about is that she hated being Hannah Montana, and she hated being this, you know, kind of two-dimensional representation of wholesome American girlhood. Now she's, you know, liberating herself, and it's a feminist act, and she'll tell you it's a feminist act, but it also includes just this massively exploitative, disrespectful sort of controversy mining. And I mean, that's a place where, you know, God knows I don't want Miley Cyrus to tune into the radio, or Meghan Trainor to tune into your show and be like, oh, feminists hate me, I better not engage with feminism anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really like you can see someone using a buzzword and talking about liberating themselves, and you can sort of see that the vast history of feminist thought and of women of color feminist thought, it really hasn't sort of penetrated wherever it is that Miley is at, if that makes sense.
We're talking with writer Sady Doyle, and quick fun fact about Miley Cyrus: there are fundamentalists in Christianity and Islam who believe that she's satanically possessed because she sticks out her tongue in a way that represents demonic images from Hindu and other iconography. I'll bet you didn't know that.
I did not know that. I mean,
so there you go.
I've seen people on the internet talking about how Miley Cyrus is demonically possessed, but they normally didn't put that much research into it. So
for the record, I do not feel that. Now, I guess I would just close by saying, you know, you made a great point. You know, let's talk about Lorde to close. I like
mm-hmm.
Lorde, and I like who she is. I like the way she presents herself. Seems to be, you know, just a very honest, and I always feel honesty is a liberating force. Of course, nobody's totally honest in show business, and I get that. But you had the sentence, how do we save the empowered teenage Lorde fans of 2015 from becoming the betrayed and embittered cynics of 2035? How do we?
I think what has to happen is that we have to stop processing feminism in music, or God forbid women in music, on the level of something that is trendy or hot or cool, or you can write, this was the year of the feminist on your year in music piece. If it is a trend, then trends change and become very uncool. They become exactly as uncool as they were once cool. And what happens then is exactly what happened in the 90s. We had this huge boom of pro-feminist, pro-woman music, and then people got tired of it, and Eminem came in, and it was gone for the next decade. It went underground. It was still around, but it wasn't what sold. So what we have to do is say that, okay, if you are a feminist in a punk band, if you're a feminist making pop, if you're a feminist in rap, that is not a trend. That is who you are, and that's what you're about. And it shouldn't be a unique quality to your music. All music should be feminist music, because all culture should be feminist culture, because feminism is just accepting women's right to be fully human in the public sphere.
Wow, that's really well put. And I would only add to that if you're a feminist or a change agent of any kind, you don't worry about trends, you create your own. And with that, we'll have to leave it there. Sady Doyle, writer, thanks so much for joining us.
Fabulous. Thank you so much.
I'm Richard RJ Eskow. We'll be right back after this. This is The Zero Hour.